Okay, good afternoon everyone and welcome to Equine Episode Examination, where today we will be talking about a royal problem. So thanks for joining us on this special Wednesday edition of it, since we were a little predisposed with post-Nintendo hype yesterday to do this then, so we moved it to today where there is slightly less post-Nintendo hype, although apparently now there is Shaq Fu hype, so fuck. If you didn't see it, there's a new Shaq Fu trailer for a new Shaq Fu game, because that needed to happen.
Yeah, it needed to happen just as much as the new Bubsy game that's coming out.
And I don't have any more cider left. Now I'm gonna have to go buy more.
We interrupt EE to bring you RE.
So, anyway, this is your first time joining us. Hello. We normally record these on Tuesdays at around 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and here on CinemaQuestria.com. So if you're watching a recording, that's where we record it. If you're watching this live with us somewhere else, if you want to join in the chat and the discussion on today's episode, make sure to come over to CinemaQuestria.com, go to the stream tab, where you'll be able to hop in our chat there and watch the stream and discuss with us. And that's pretty much what we're going to be doing, is discussing this past weekend's episode, A Royal Problem, giving our thoughts and opinions on it, having a group discussion on, if we differ on anything, and then probably more or less just gush over the episode today for who knows how many hours. So we'll start with a little more broad discussion. We'll get to more specific things as we go on. Obviously, like I mentioned, we have the chat here, but we also have a few people here in the call with me. I'm Rain Shadow, and we will be discussing a lot of things if everyone else wants to introduce themselves.
I'm the handsome fat ass Mr. Ben.
I'm Jay Smith.
And I'm Matt the Shadow Man, and yeah, I might actually be awake for all this.
Matt would not want to miss this episode for the world. So
I don't know. Nintendo made it very, very difficult for yesterday.
Yeah, there's a little too much going on there to try and do this yesterday. Oh gosh. So yeah, what's everyone's initial thoughts on this episode? I mean, I think mine can just be summed in 2 words. Holy crap. That's about all I need to say about the episode. I can just wrap it up right there.
Oh my god, mind blown. That's pretty much about how my first reaction was.
It was everybody's reaction.
No, I didn't really like the episode. No. I fucking loved the episode.
Okay, I was getting my hand. I was getting my hand ready on the mute button there, Matt. So okay, good.
So having a differing opinion is not welcome here then.
On this episode, no. Of course, I'm kidding. It was a great episode, though. But yeah, gosh, I mean, holy crap, this was again, this is sort of like the season of sort of episodes that have been a long time coming, I guess I should say. Joe and Christine have really brought a ton of episodes that I know a lot of people who've watched the show have been waiting to see for a long time, and we've already discussed this a lot so far here this season of episodes that have already delved into Celestia a little more in the season premiere. We got to see Rainbow Dash's parents and etc. All these things that we haven't seen over 7 seasons, and they're sort of throwing at us this season, and this is just another one in terms of that. I know a lot of fans of an episode we got a lot of Celestia in the premiere, which was great. But I know a lot of people, myself included, were waiting for kind of a full-on Celestia episode, or a full-on Celestia and Luna episode where it really focused on them rather than them just kind of playing a secondary part in a story. And oh boy, did we get that episode here?
But Rain, it sucks because it had Starlight be the mediator between the two.
Yeah, obviously they had to taint this perfect Celestia Luna episode with her being involved.
That's the thing that really does bug me. People will get so excited, and all people did in comment sections is just moan, "Oh, Starlight's in it, it's going to ruin the episode." It's like, you haven't seen it yet. Honestly, I don't. You know, Twilight would have been a terrible choice to be mediator here because she would have been horribly biased. She even said so herself in the episode.
Let's see. So yeah, let's just dive in. Let's get to the story and the writing. As I mentioned, this episode was written by Joanne Lewis and Christine Sonko, of course, the story editors of this season. So this is the third episode this season they've written, and they've written like three just extraordinarily fantastic, three of the best episodes of the season there. So, and of course, bringing us here this really long overdue, long requested episode here of one devoted specifically to the Royal Sisters, and sort of getting us to see more of, letting us see more of them outside of sort of the cameos we normally get in episodes. But yeah, I mean, just fantastically written episode here. And I was really excited to see that not only originally the episode's kind of summary and title when it came out, but then also learning that they wrote the episode was pretty exciting.
Whoever storyboarded the dream bubble sequence deserves a fucking medal.
Yeah.
That DJ Flurry Heart, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about there when we get to the.
Well, what about the
when we get to the human humor part there, because that was great.
I love how Rado just recently showed me that what was Discord and the Smooths doing in that bubble? They were having a fucking pillow fight.
I'm losing lost connection to IRC. See if I can get this to just. There we go. One of the interesting things about the episode is, of course, we finally get the map, the cutie map returning, which has been also absent this season. It was absent for the first half of last season as well, before Twilight and Starlight were able to use a spell to sort of activate it again, I guess, in that first map episode. So, and a couple interesting things here where, not only do we finally get the map returning, but it does kind of two interesting things where it calls Starlight, and then it also only calls Starlight, so it doesn't like call a second one, which has sort of been the thing of it since we started doing these map episodes, which was definitely an interesting sort of turn. Kind of interesting to see where they go forward with this. It's kind of like looking at it, it's sort of like, I know a lot of people asking why Starlight, what exactly has it done? It makes sense, like everything before, it made sense kind of why it was calling the main six, since the main six are sort of tied to it due to their connection with the elements, and the elements' connection with the Tree of Harmony, and the map came from the Tree of Harmony, so that's sort of why the main six were so heavily related, to the map. So Starlight getting called by the map is a little weird at first. It might have something to do with her using magic on the map back in the season 5 finale and sort of abusing the map with that, or how she helped Twilight bring the map back last season with magic. Something with that magical connection there might have actually connected to her to it in some way. And now that Starlight's sort of become a protege to the Master of Friendship here, and is, doing a lot of similar things to Twilight now, maybe the map kind of thinks it's time for her to go and help solve some friendship problems as well.
When Twilight was fixing it, she was basically like, you know what, I just want to read more books, so just fuck it, just replace my name with Starlight. Sorted.
So, yeah, and I think it also has to, going back to what Matt had mentioned a little bit ago there in terms of the second question there, not only why is it calling Starlight, but why is it calling only her? Because in the past, it's always called two of the main six to go solve a friendship problem, and it has a good reason for choosing two of them to utilize sort of like a talent from both of them in order to solve the problem. And that's something we've discussed in the past episodes in terms of why the map specifically called those two ponies. So why did it only call Starlight here? And I think it's pretty simple. It's pretty much what Matt said earlier. I really think, simply put, that the main six, and it's like Matt said, especially Twilight, would be definitely biased towards Princess Celestia in this in this case.
I will say that it's a slight missed opportunity, although to be fair, the episode was already fully loaded as it was. Had Twilight and Starlight gone, we could have also had some kind of subtext that Twilight doesn't necessarily have to hero worship Celestia so much. It's not quite. She very heavily looks up to her. I mean, it's close to hero worship. It's not quite that, but it's not far off. And you could have perhaps had the thing of, sometimes, people to understand, see them. I suppose with Rainbow and the Wonderbolts, although, your mileage will vary on that.
But I think that would also be a problem, because that would signify that the map called someone who shouldn't be called. And I think that was kind of the point of why Twilight wasn't called at all, is because the map knew that she would have such bias towards Princess Celestia. You wonder how
the map knows, though. That's a bit worrying.
Well, because it's
sentient. It's going to take. It's the real villain of the show.
It's because it's connected to the main six through the elements, so it does understand and know them, as we've seen in all the other map episodes previously, where it's able to pick, who gets to go based on their personality and stuff like that. Where was I? So even, of course, it's kind of directly to mention even Twilight's bias in the episode as well, and sort of directly show us that as Starlight is talking to her. So they kind of even do that, even though the map didn't call her. They do still work Twilight into the episode through that spell she's able to do. So we're able to actually see her sort of bias that she has towards Celestia, and why the map wouldn't have called her to solve this friendship problem. Where Starlight, of course, has both the benefit of being the protege of the Princess of Friendship and able, learning how to, help with friendship problems through Twilight, but is also an outsider who really doesn't have any strong opinions towards either Celestia or Luna, allowing her to kind of be a more impartial mediator here. So it's a nice little thing, just showing kind of the map knows what it's doing here.
I also like that Starlight did actually, she took her time to actually see both sides of the story. She didn't just for example, had Twilight gone and immediately had seen Celestia cooking breakfast and Luna not taking, she probably would have just jumped right off and thought it was all Luna's fault. I mean, that's almost certainly what she would have done. I'm not going to chastise Twilight too much for that, because, like you said, she's got so much emotional baggage, having essentially, all
she's
of
a
her,
big Celestia boner.
What's her bigger boner for? Celestia or books?
Books about Celestia.
I was gonna say books that contain or are about Celestia. She gets a double wing boner for that.
Plus, I don't think Twilight or any of the other main six would have done what Starlight did and resort to switching their cutie marks.
Well, none of them would have been able. Twilight would have been the only one who would be able to do that in the first place.
Twilight,
potentially. Yeah. I mean, that's another thing I liked, is how the sort of the problem that Starlight causes here, and which also leads to the resolution, is based on having magical ability over cutie marks, which is something she has ever since her introduction in season 5. She seemed to have a lot of magical power over cutie marks, taking them away. Here we see her switching them. So that's definitely interesting in terms of her character. And of course here she's once again having some issues in terms of trying to impulsively use magic just to solve problems. And here it kind of leads to that classic kind of in your shoes kind of episode.
I also love it's like Twilight couldn't go, but she still couldn't quite help herself, and I just the when she's obviously interacting with Starlight in her in the room she's staying in, it's just fantastic. I just love it when it gets to a point where she's like, oh fuck this, and just puts her in the drawer. It's fantastic. I love that. So good.
And that's another interesting point that Mr. Ben's sort of making about Twilight not understanding the phrase hooves off. I think if Twilight, taking her bias towards Celestia out of the picture here, I think Twilight would have like, you know, been a lot more kind of hooves on, as Mr. Ben said, in this situation. Whereas, as Matt mentioned earlier, in terms of Starlight kind of taking a step back and just sort of being there with Celestia and being there with Luna and sort of just watching and seeing what the problem is. For that first part of the episode, she's pretty much just sitting back as an observer and trying to find what's wrong with it until she's actually able to sort of see what the problem is.
I'm gonna say, yeah, Twilight kind of always strikes me as the type of person to go for problem solving. That she's a very intellectual pony. She's very bookish, but Twilight really strikes me as the type of person to really jump into a problem basically head first. She's very dynamic in terms of being problem solving, whereas Starlight kind of seems to be more the type of person to approach it from a distance. She's the one more. She's far more analytical of the two, in my opinion.
It's kind of funny. You could almost mirror Celestia and Luna with Twilight and Starlight here, where I think Twilight is a lot more sort of sure of herself here, where she would be, you know, very sure of her opinion and very sure of, oh, it's, you know, this is Luna's problem or something like that. Where Starlight, just by the nature of her past here, where she's screwed up and done so many things wrong, I think she is a little bit more cautious about you know, how she's approaching this situation to begin with here because of that. And you can kind of see a similarity with Celestia and Luna as well. And in the past, where, you know, of course, Luna's been extremely cautious about her past and subconscious about her past as well, as we saw in Do Princess Dream of the Magic Sheep, where here Celestia definitely seems a lot more sort of I guess cocky, I guess a little bit. You know, we see that a lot from her throughout the episode in terms of what her tasks are and how hard her tasks are compared to Luna's.
Well, Celestia also does have the benefit of having 1,000 years of practical experience.
Mm-hmm.
So she's kind of got that going for her.
I'm just thinking to myself, because obviously the map chose Starlight, and I'm just sort of running through my head the rest of the main six and see if any of them are suitable. And the only one that even remotely comes close to me is Fluttershy. But the problem with Fluttershy, while she would have listened to both sides of the story, she would have never have been bold enough to help, like, provide a solution or do like what Starlight did.
It's just like, I think really just because of the whole Nightmare Moon thing, I don't think any of the main six, when presented with this problem, like the way Starlight went through it, if they were presented with that problem, I don't think they would have sided with Luna. I think they would have immediately said, oh, Luna's just, you know, being jealous again here, and that's the problem. You know, that's the problem. It's just she hasn't gotten over her jealousy, period, end of story. I really think that any of the main six would have said that just because of that, what happened in the series premiere of the show.
At least I didn't send Twist.
Fucking Twist would have ruined everything. We would have gotten both Nightmare Moon and Nightmare Celestia.
Well, if they wanted to do a map episode with two ponies still, they should have sent Trixie with her. That would have mixed things up.
It would have also made things a lot worse to at the very beginning as well.
See,
more than likely.
I don't think we're ever going to see the map call anyone else other than the main six or Starlight, unless someone else has another interaction with the map like Starlight did. It wouldn't really make any sense, because the whole thing with the map is grown from the Tree of Harmony, which has a connection to the main six.
I mean, the only other one that possibly might, but the problem is that he doesn't have a cutie mark, is Spike, because Spike does have a chair at the table, so that's the only other character I think that even remotely has a chance. But the only way that would work with him is if like a big mechanical boot comes out the side of the table and it just boots him to wherever they want it to go.
Really, gosh, just writing-wise, it was just really an incredibly well-written episode. It really feels like it's a story that really easily feels like it could have been a two-parter episode, but they managed to get it in this 22-minute time frame without it feeling rushed or anything like that. Like they cut out stuff. It felt like a fully fleshed episode that could have been a full 44-minute two-parter, but it felt right at home in the 22-minute time frame.
One of the things that I really liked about this episode is that this particular plot was actually technically used already, in the sense that this Luna doing Celestia's duties in her place was actually already used in a micro-series comic. The thing was, though, is that in the case of the comic book, this was actually more of a bet rather than a magically enforced role swap. I'm sorry, I'm tripping over my own tongue here again. And the story was completely Luna-centric. But I'm really preferring this particular episode here because while the comic did actually play the whole thing mainly almost completely for comedy, this episode, while also kind of high up on the comedic scale, also played it a lot more for drama, and we also got to see the additional side of Celestia taking over Luna's duties as well, which was something that the original comic didn't go into.
Yeah, this was a lot more emotional in it, and kind of character development heavy, and it treated both of them as having an issue here, and both of them had really having to walk in each other's shoes to try and understand each other, because they didn't have that understanding about kind of what each other sort of did there, or didn't have that open line of communication about anything. So this one definitely tackled it. It still had a ton of comedy in it, like you said, but yeah, I think it tackled it a lot better.
I think. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the big friction is also that I'm sure, but there's worry on both sides that if they flare up at each other, that it could end up like as bad as it did 1,000 years prior. That's the real. I think that's sort of the terrifying thing. It's very difficult to really grasp that that these are beings that are because basically it's basically assumed that the Luna and Celestia are considerably older than any other pony or even maybe any other creature in Equestria. I mean, obviously we don't know that for certain, but it's at least compared to regular ponies, they will endure whereas others won't. And it seems to me that a lot of the time they really only have each other, and that's when there's that sort of friction, it just makes it all the more difficult. And I think the fact that someone was as bold as Starlight was, I think that's a credit to Starlight, that she's able to see behind the magnitude of who she is speaking to, or what the consequence may be if it went terribly wrong. And that takes a very brave character, and I think a lot of people like to really bear down on Starlight for what she was, and how quote unquote rushed her redemption was. But really and truthfully, in my opinion, her redemption did not happen in the season 5 finale. Her redemption has happened continuously since that point, and I don't think it's still even remotely complete. I think it's only happening now, and I think it's a really great way of bringing forth more of the what friendship lessons that they can do. I think it's a great way of doing that, and it's also it's also worked very well with Sunset Shimmer, and it's something that I definitely think makes the show a lot more interesting to watch. I don't necessarily think that it's going to work all the time, for sure, but here it works almost perfectly for the situation that Starlight is forced into, and the situation that it presents itself. And really and truthfully, like we've said before, she was really the only character that really could have been used in a what I would call a genuine way that makes it work.
Going back to a previous point that you had made at the beginning there, because I had a note on that too. Is just I think that this has a lot to do with the two sisters. You know, the two sisters don't have the best communication between each other, and I think like Matt said there a minute ago, I think that does have a lot to do with they really don't want to feel angry or annoyed with each other. They don't want to sort of bring that tension, so they don't really have that communication if one of them is annoying or making them angry or something like that. They're just sort of harboring it to themselves, and it's just kind of building up, bottling up inside here, simply because they don't want to talk about it, because they're kind of afraid, and they have that whole shadow of sort of what happened in the past with Nightmare Moon, overshadowing them there. It was also nice here to seeing how exactly what Celestia and Luna sort of do on a day-to-day basis. We sort of get a rundown of Celestia's day through Luna's eyes, and then Luna's nights through Celestia's eyes there, and sort of get more detail onto what each of them actually kind of do on a normal day. That obviously Celestia's just not sitting around reading letters from Twilight and stuff. She's a very specific sort of schedule that she has to do as sort of the princess queen or whatever of Canterlot there. And I think it was really like realistic kind of sounding schedule and situation there. And I'm just glad that they kind of showed us that. It was interesting to see.
Because I think we've just saying about what Mr. Ben has written in the chat there, saying about us seeing, Celestia actually being more of a fully fledged friend. I think the thing that Celestia is most scared of anything is loss. Remember back to Celestial Advice. She was absolutely terrified to let Twilight go to Ponyville. She was sort of scared to lose her, and I think that was born out of losing Luna for so long, and that it seems to be one of the greatest fears that Celestia has now. It is loss. I'm sure being as old as she is and losing so many ponies over the years as well probably doesn't help that either.
Yeah, I was trying to say something, and I think I wasn't able to be heard. I was having some connection issues. As I was saying, I was trying to say out loud, was one of the things that I loved about getting to see some more of the Celestia's fears and insecurities is that going into that part where she's kind of going through the dreamscape, and she goes up against her nightmare self, Daybreaker. Daybreaker is basically completely ignoring Starlight in favor of talking to Celestia, having intimate knowledge of her mind and powers, and Celestia appears to take a lot of the things that Daybreaker said personally. So, this kind of implies that Daybreaker wasn't just a creation of Starlight's dream, but a manifestation of Celestia's own subconscious thoughts into the dreamscape, which leads to the manifestation on that. This is kind of also helped interpreted by the fact that Luna inexplicably knows Daybreaker's name without Celestia ever mentioning it to her. But another thing that I've also kind of is that the thing here is one of the big things that I've also loved about this episode was it was also stated, well, not really stated, but it was also implied that with Celestia going through her day-to-day duties and trying to get from one thing to another, she has to basically, go from one point to another point from bullet points on her schedule and go from one thing to the next without having to really focus more on a problem. Because that situation in the episode where Luna was at that school thing where she got that frown photographed, and because of that instant frown that she got, the school wasn't able to raise up enough funds to go for that field trip, and Luna was basically letting that dwell on her psyche, her subconscious, pretty much the rest of the day, and she was basically beating herself over about it. But Starlight specifically stated that, look, you can't focus on this. You have other things to do. Because this is what Celestia would do. And it's kind of implied that Celestia does this on a day-to-day basis. She does this every day. So she has to, that's kind of one of the big things that I think that is one of the issues that I kind of like about Celestia, because it's one of those things that you have to realize that she's probably dealing with this on so often that even though she's done this for like 1,000 years, it's still something that's probably gonna have to gnaw at her. Like, hey, what if I've messed up? I mean, what if it's not just like the little public relations thing, but it's also, what about if she's dealing with something? What am I trying to say here? Something more impactful, like a foreign relations, like say with Yakistan or Saudi Arabia or something like that. She basically has to step around political issues, and she's basically walking through what's effectively a landmine every day without making sure that she steps on the wrong toes or anything like that. So, and exactly like right there, what Tim says. So, yeah, and that's what a lot of the things that I've also remembered getting in with the discussion of a friend of mine, where some people think that being a king or a queen or any sort of monarch would be awesome because you'd be able to sit back and relax all day and live off the taxes of your grow fat off the taxes of your
and
subjects.
spy on your subjects through a giant telescope the entire day. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, man, that's not how it works. I mean, if you're a king, your subjects don't serve you. You serve your subjects. That's what's the whole point of being a king or a queen is all about, is that you're supposed to provide that guidance. You're supposed to provide that security, and
help solve trouble and solve arguments and stuff like that. Like we saw Luna trying to do in the episode a couple times, solving problems, solving arguments, disputes, stuff like that.
Yeah. And exactly like what Tim says in the chat room, I mean, she's basically choosing every day who wins, who loses, and if she makes the slightest error, the slightest miscalculation on her part, could basically make or break, entire lives, and ranging from just the smallest little neighborhood issues to like possibly in like the simplest faux pas can wind up leading Equestria into like a decades-long war, possibly. So, and that's something that probably keeps her up at night. And I'm pretty sure that something like that maybe has, like, especially in the very early days of her sole reign, because when she was originally with Luna, it was just her and Luna, so at least she had Luna's support. She at least had someone to bounce ideas off of, to laugh along with it. But then after the Nightmare Moon incident and she sealed her away, Celestia was alone. She didn't have anybody to do anything like that with. She didn't have that soul sort of support, because Luna was the only other one that she had. Luna was her equal. Luna was her sole confidant, her. And what do you do when you don't have that person to rely on? What do you do when you don't have that equal to rely on for further strength? I mean, it's lonely at the top. So what do you do when you are just that one person?
One thing that kind of was going through my mind during the episode is sort of like when Luna was banished to the moon for 1,000 years. I'm guessing that there was just no one doing Luna's duties, with the exception of Celestia raising the moon every night. Because I obviously Celestia isn't going to be awake for 24 hours as the only princess to do
Obviously,
it.
yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to think sort of like there's no one patrolling the dream realm or like keeping watch of the kingdom, and all the other duties that Luna was shown to have in the episode for that 1,000-year period, which is interesting. Makes you wonder how that affected Equestria in terms of not having Luna there to do that and to dreamwalk. It's not something the show has really tackled at all. So it would just sort of be anything relating to that's just going to be speculation. But it's kind of an interesting thing to think about, sort of where that Celestia just has never done that before. I don't think she ever tried it. It seemed like it was the first time she was doing it here. She obviously isn't going to be awake 24 hours, so she's going to be sleeping at that point anyway. So it's just, I wonder what kind of effect that had on Equestria and how Luna coming back and actually, being able to do that again has changed Equestria as well. I mean, we've seen her going into the dreams of the CMC and helping them very specifically in the show.
Just dialing back slightly on what Mr. Ben was saying about Celestia obviously basically being sort of on her own. Admittedly, with like some of the day-to-day running things that she does, she obviously will have like an inner circle of ponies that probably help her and stuff. But obviously, ultimately, the buck stops with her, and obviously, the very major decisions are always going to end up on her doorstep. But Luna doesn't have any of that luxury whatsoever. If she screws up, she can't like ask for someone to come in and help her. No one else can dreamwork. Only she can do that. So if she screws up, she's got to sort it out herself, or basically she's fucked, because it's a job that only she can do.
And when we've seen her deal with some pretty serious shit in dreams, both in terms physically and emotionally.
That's the thing with dreams. I mean, anything is possible. There's no limits. Unlike in the real world. I mean,
it apparently can have actual real world effects, like we see in this episode where Luna comments that if we don't solve this problem, this is going to seriously damage Starlight's psyche IRL, not just in the dream world here.
Yeah. Well, if you have a particularly nasty nightmare that seems, almost close, I'm sure you've had one of those dreams that feels like it was almost real. I think nearly everyone's had one of those sorts of dreams.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. More times I can count.
But you can have incredibly vivid nightmares, and if you keep getting them or something similar, it can wear on your own, day-to-day lives. It can turn you, it can make you more withdrawn. It can make you more nervous, more worried, and various other sort of negative emotions.
Yeah, and it's interesting because first off, I think it would be really cool. I don't think the show would do this because you only have so many episodes a season, but it'd be cool if some sort of, whether the comics or books or something, media would tackle sort of that time period where Celestia was ruling without Luna, and just how Luna not being there specifically sort of affected things, because it's kind of something that this episode sort of hints on, but it doesn't really tackle in terms of when Luna was gone, when Celestia was by herself. What what happened there? How did Luna not being there, not being able to dreamwalk and other stuff? It'd be really cool to see sort of the effects that may have had, so we can it'll give more importance to, I guess what I'm trying to say is it will give more importance to sort of Luna's role here that this episode really doesn't give. We've seen her dreamwalk and stuff, but we don't know, we've never seen the effect of her not being there, really. We just know about it, but we haven't seen the effect of her not being there, which would be an interesting kind of topic for some sort of media relating to the show to cover. But it's also kind of an interesting note here that this Starlight, at one point in the episode, during the dream sequence there, said that without both of you there's no harmony. And I think that was a very specific line about it, sort of relating to that. And you can all look back to it on the first episode, where really the main six embodied the elements of harmony. They unlocked the sixth element. They harnessed the elements of harmony at the same time as they brought Luna back. So when
But
Luna
also,
comes
don't
back,
forget
suddenly
that both
Harmony.
Luna and Celestia also wielded the elements themselves previously when they obviously
Yep.
tackled Discord. So
Yep,
it's
and when
it's a
and
case that
here's the
they
thing.
are also a
No,
part of that balance even from
but
the
here's the
start.
thing. They wielded the elements, and then Celestia used the elements of Harmony to banish Luna, and then the elements disappeared because of that.
Yeah, because there was no balance.
Because there was no balance, and then the elements reappeared when the main six brought the balance back. So that was kind of a cool little dialogue thing that you can kind of piece stuff together in terms of harmony and balance in there, with Luna being back versus when she was away. With Luna now being back, there's harmony, there's elements again. The main six were formed, and they've defeated off a ton of different threats to the Empire.
Interesting hypothetical question then, because technically the elements are no longer around because we have the map.
Well, they are.
The main. They are and they aren't, but they're not like available like all
yeah, I mean they're not available to use, but they exist because they return them back to the tree. Where before they weren't even in the tree at all. They just weren't around.
It would be interesting, but would the map disappear, or would the elements manifest themselves back if there was like severe disharmony between the main six?
Yeah, I mean I think you might
see possibly. It's a hypothetical thing that fanfiction writers get on that.
Yeah, you might see. I'm just spitting stuff out here, but you might be like a similar effect to like we saw in the season 4 premiere when the Tree of Harmony was under effect. There, you might get this like slow deterioration of stuff with the tree, the tree and everything out there. The map would definitely disappear.
It would be like a good visual analogy of it as things like perhaps disintegrated between the main six, that the tree like slowly withers and dies. I mean, that would be, or dying even. I don't think it would actually die, but that would be quite an interesting thing to see. I don't think they would ever do that. I mean, it would be really fascinating if they did, but it's certainly something that makes you wonder. The elements have obviously not always been around, because whenever there has been harmony, they've either been locked away, or they've been hidden, or they've like you say, they've manifested themselves as they are now. It seems to me that the elements are only really ever around when they're actually truly needed.
Yeah. So, but I guess on that thing, I think that would be a really cool thing for some sort of side story to tackle. But that is one note that I had in terms of that line from Starlight there about harmony only being there when both the sisters were in power. One of the things I really liked about the writing here was just the fantastic dialogue and banter between Luna and Celestia throughout the episode. Getting to see sort of their emotions escalate and arguing with each other, joking with each other, just seeing this different side of them, and this just great banter between them. We got a little hint of that kind of banter back in the in episode 100, and it was great to see that expanded upon in this episode.
But to say, I loved how, I suppose this is probably getting a little bit into voice acting here, but I really loved how Nicole Oliver and Tabitha St. Germain just bounced each other, just played off each other so well. They sounded so natural, too.
Yeah, it was written and acted very naturally, yeah.
I mean, if you didn't know that these two were just regular voice actors, you could almost make the mistake that these were probably like real sisters in real life almost.
Yeah.
If they were magically hugely powerful pony princesses from Magical Land of Equestria.
Yeah.
To be fair, it's not like it's the first time we've had realistic dialogue between siblings, though. I mean, we've obviously had Rarity and Sweetie Belle, which has shown a lot of realistic dialogue, and even Apple Bloom and Applejack, so, and even Big Mac. So, the show does seem to do. It's one of its big strengths is in. Well, really, it's in the interactions and dialogue, and obviously a show that's about friendship and and more broadly about family and even it touches on sort of love. It's basically going to have a cornerstone of you need great interaction, you need great dialogue, and in particular with this episode, it's absolutely fantastic.
Going forward a little bit, just really, that whole kind of climax of the episode at the end was just incredibly well done. That whole dream sequence with what's Starlight's dream sequence at the end there. It was great to have another sort of one-on-one like battle sequence in the show. It's not something we've really seen a lot recently. We haven't, even in the season 6 finale, there wasn't a ton of like that one-on-one battling. There's a lot of like dialogue and stuff like that helped in the end Thorax sort of change forms or whatever happened there. So there wasn't a lot of that. So this kind of harkens back to some of like the season 4 finale or even parts of the season 5 finale where there's a lot more of those battle sequences. So it was nice to see one of those again and having not be in a two-parter either, having it be sort of in the middle of the season for it. I guess stuff like that, just some of the visuals in the story there, and like seeing Daybreaker strike down Nightmare Moon and Nightmare Moon just kind of lying motionless on the ground in front of the throne was just like a holy shit kind of moment. That was a pretty powerful, dark sort of moment in that dream, seeing her strike Nightmare Moon down and just kind of claim that throne with all the fire and stuff spitting up around it. Very intense for this show, I think.
Daybreaker just went complete Fire Lord Ozai in that scene.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's a good example.
We now need a laser pony princess so that she can be a firing her lasers.
It's almost too bad we couldn't get Mark Hamill in for like a cameo line or something like that. I kid, of course.
No. What you want is Daybreaker to do a big flamethrower attack, and then you need that guy from Mortal Kombat going toasty.
And while we're on the subject of the dreams here, just another holy crap moment, like Luna's dream. That's probably like one of the most unsettling things I've ever seen in the show. Like especially when her teeth started falling out. That was like, holy crap, that's really kind of unsettling and legitimately creepy for this show. Like that's gonna give some kids nightmares.
It's okay, kids have baby teeth, they'll grow back. They'll be fine.
I know, I've had a lot of nightmares about losing my teeth sometimes. I don't know.
Very good. Gonna make a killing tonight.
I don't think I've ever had a nightmare about me losing my teeth.
Oh, I do all the time. Usually it's about like, oh gosh, why is this tooth loose?
Not being able to speak, yes.
Oh yeah, I think everyone has. I've had those dreams. It's like you want to scream and you just can't. Those are the worst.
And the falling dream. I've had that a couple of times.
Oh yeah. See, moving on to the characters, because there's a couple kind of point here I wanted to make that sort of relates to just the writing of here, is that whole climax and that part right after the climax was just incredibly well written. And going back to that very well written dialogue, that big emotional payoff that we had between Celestia and Luna during the dream battle there, where Celestia, they're both talking to each other, and they finally just kind of break down and realize just how hard each of them actually has it in their jobs. With Celestia saying, it takes such a strong, brave pony to do what you do. And then Luna responded, and that pony is you. And all the dialogue that followed. It was just such a fantastically executed emotional character moment between the two sisters there, when they both kind of realized how strong each other are and how hard their jobs are. And I guess it was such a fantastic emotional payoff and such a fantastic resolution to that conflict of both the dream and the episode as a whole. Yeah, it was paced really well with, giving time to set the situation up, showing the problem, spending time with both Celestia and Luna separately as they both try and tackle the other sister's job so they can both sort of realize how hard those jobs are, then all leading up to that sort of dream sequence moment where they're both able to provide each other that support and strength that they both need to successfully rule together. And it sort of gives us an insight into that, how they both support each other. or at least how they're supposed to support each other.
I know this is slightly more sort of on the humour side, not necessarily on the right, but I do love the sort of the little details, and I also just love when Luna comes in after her day of night of dream walking, I should say, and she comes in and is like, hey, eats a banana peel, shoves the middle of the banana in the bin. It's brilliant. I just love that. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it just takes a banana, eats the peel, and then just throws the rest of the banana away. That was brilliant.
It's also the delivery, the fact that she comes in and says, hi, and just buggers off. Brilliant. It's a bit like me if I've had a particularly horrible day at work.
I just think this episode just had such fantastic characterization for. I mean, this is really the first we've seen of the two sisters, and then really an extended episode like this, where it really kind of dives into their character and sort of how they are outside of their princessy duties, how they are just as sisters versus rulers of Equestria. And we've sort of gotten glimpses of this in their characterization before, like I mentioned episode 100 as a good example of that. But this episode just expands them so much and does it so well, and really just expands their characters. So we get to see Celestia. She keeps her kind of joking manner, and like I mentioned earlier, she seems to be a little kind of fuller of herself and cocky at times. At least when she's comparing her job to Luna's job, especially like at the end of the night when Luna's kind of goes to bed and Celestia comes in. Oh, she's going to bed already. Oh yeah, like she has that very sort of like sort of pseudo cocky stuff when it comes to her personality there. And we've seen her joking free-spirited nature in some previous episodes, such as like a couple examples that come to mind are at the end of Make New Friends and Keep Discord and The Best Night Ever, all the way back in season 1 as well, where she sort of jokes with Twilight, and we've seen her do that in other episodes as well. So she does have this like trolly joking nature.
That's what I was going to say. That's where Trollestia sort of came in.
So we continue to see that expanded upon and be featured in this episode as well. They really expand it and flesh it out here.
But she has a much more sort of a playful exterior compared to Luna. Luna is a lot more stern and serious. Not obviously all the time, but in terms of sort of the way she is perceived outwardly, she's obviously a lot more stern in that, and I think that's because a lot of the emotion that she sees is bottled up inside her, or she sees inside other ponies, and it's interesting to note that she can probably see what's probably telling is, while Celestia probably has the ability of many centuries of dealing with ponies to be able to sort of understand about them from a sort of a pragmatic and outwardly facing kind of way of dealing with ponies. I think Luna actually has more of a deeper understanding of the pony themselves, more centrally.
And that's sort of a good point.
She sees into their dreams and into sort of their own psyche, whereas Celestia just sees more what they're doing outwardly. So, it would be very interesting to see a very deeply not deeply, but a much more complex issue with something that perhaps only Celestia and Luna can deal with, and we actually have to sort of understand not only what the character is doing outwardly that Celestia can deal with, but something a lot more inwards that only Luna would be able to help understand.
See, and that's kind of an interesting point in terms of how they see their the ponies that they rule over there, where Celestia spends a lot of time with ponies during the day, interacting with them. Obviously, Luna's usually by herself; she doesn't interact with ponies. But Celestia sees those ponies, a lot of ponies every day, and interacts with them on their outside. But Luna then gets kind of deeper in, and so where Celestia might kind of know a lot of ponies and interact with a lot of them and know how they are on the outside, Luna knows how a lot of these ponies are actually like on the inside, like who they actually are, versus kind of the outward appearance that Celestia would see. So she would have a much like deeper knowledge of a lot of ponies compared to Celestia. And some of the notes I had on Luna was it's interesting because Luna is a lot more kind of very serious and regal. She seems to take her job a lot more seriously than Celestia. And I don't mean that in terms of like taking it seriously, like actually doing the job correctly or anything like. I mean like actually Celestia is a lot more laid back with the job. She does the job, but she's a lot more laid back of it. Luna really takes things really seriously with her job, and we've seen that in the past with the Royal Candlelight voice. Celestia speaks a lot more sort of natural, where Luna speaks a lot more like royally, in terms of how they speak in the show since the beginning. So it's kind of an interesting difference there with Luna really trying hard to be that more royal person, where Celestia is older and it's just kind of a little more laid back there. But we do see more of Celestia as well. Like we in addition to like the joking side I was mentioning earlier, we do get to see some other sides of her personality too. Like when she gets really frustrated and angry with Luna, we just really haven't seen Celestia like that before. We saw it a little bit in episode 100, but actually getting to see her really frustrated and with Luna here and angry with Luna is a side of her that we really don't get to see. So it was nice seeing that side of her here. And on the opposite side, while Luna is, of course, much more moody and still harbors some angst towards her sister that we see in this episode, we do see a different side of her, too, especially when we get to the end and she starts joking with Celestia about her pancakes or about talking to herself. So she kind of lets that guard down a little bit more and becomes a little more casual than we've seen her in the past. So it was nice seeing that different side of both of them.
I mean, like you just sort of mentioning how they act as actual characters, and obviously things like the thing to remember is Luna is going to be a lot more socially awkward than Celestia, just by the sheer fact that the job she does is literally on her own, night after night. She seldom sees other In fact, there probably was a time for many maybe tens of years or a long stretches of time where the only other pony she'll ever see is Celestia, and that's literally when she sort of finishes her shift and Celestia starts hers.
And this episode really provides a nice, really great context character-wise as to why Luna turned into Nightmare Moon in the first place. It's kind of something that's been explored in other media before, like the comics, but the show really hasn't delved into that much. We know the show has kind of told us the basics as to why Luna turned into Nightmare Moon, but we've really only seen her as Nightmare Moon and then kind of reverting back to Luna. Like we saw the flashback in the Season 4 premiere where we saw Celestia banishing Nightmare Moon, but the show has never really delved into that much why she turned into Nightmare Moon, other than there was some tension between her and Celestia. But we can really see why in this episode, as they still have this conflict between each other. We knew that Luna became jealous of Celestia, and here in this episode the show explicitly kind of shows us examples of Luna becoming jealous of Celestia and sort of what she does, and then Celestia seeing how Luna's acting and being annoyed by that like Luna isn't appreciating it, everything that she does as well. So it's really cool to sort of have that show canon visuals and story as to why Nightmare Moon even happened in the first place.
What I find interesting now is Luna to like the outsider, and hell, even if we want to sort of speak broadly as the show, the fandom. Luna has always fascinated people, basically ever since she obviously appeared in the very first episode of the show. And it's interesting. I think the fact that Luna's had that sort of mystique there, I think that ended up happening with Celestia purely from the fact that we only got to see her so sporadically. Just me saying about Luna being more socially awkward, whilst obviously Celestia is more socially adept, she doesn't... Luna will understand the bigger depths that a personality that a pony has, whereas with Celestia she only seems to be able to see the surface, because she may well be interacting with ponies, but she's interacting with a hell of a lot of ponies. She could possibly see, tens or hundreds or even thousands, or tens of thousands if she's, say she's doing the summer solstice or something, or whatever, or some big event. She's interacting with ponies, but she's only doing it on a a lot of the time it's only on a superficial or business level. It's very seldom on a personal level, and that's probably why she has such a deep attachment to sort of her brighter students.
Yes, good point.
Sunset
Good
Simmer
point.
and Twilight Sparkle, because she's obviously interacting with them far more than she would do with any sort of any other regular sort of nobles ponies or the like.
She really, I think she really appreciates having proteges and having that teaching role, because we've seen her actually like teaching students in her school one-on-one with them, which is a little odd for someone that has so much to do and is so important in terms of their status in the area, to have that kind of one-on-one. But yeah, I think you hit it right on the nail there in terms of she interacts with so many ponies on a day-to-day basis and doesn't get that time to really get to know anyone. That I think she really does appreciate the time she does get in terms of interacting with maybe a few of her, like, the very bright students, or taking on being a mentor to other ponies just because of that.
It really does explain a lot as well, like how deep and how close together Twilight's relationship with her mentor is, specifically because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you see, you've got to remember that Twilight herself is fairly socially awkward as well, so she,
That's true.
So she's going to have an attachment to a pony that perhaps, understands her more than sort of it. The only other ponies that would understand her more is probably her parents.
Or her brother.
Yeah. Well, just a family in general.
Yeah.
No, I'd count Spike in family with that,
yeah.
So...
I was just about to say, and Cadence, but Cadence technically is kind of family, at least by in-law anyway.
And of course, this character-wise, we also, in Starlight's Dream at least, we get the return of Nightmare Moon and are introduced to sort of her Celestia counterpart in Daybreaker there, which was certainly an interesting turn for the episode there.
I really loved the fact that we got Daybreaker, because the notion of a darker, evil form of Celestia has been played within the fandom pretty much since the very beginning of Season 1 as well. It usually given the name of like Nightmare Star, or Nightmare Flare, Solar Flare, something like that. But what's very notable is that the official canon Daybreaker pretty much remains consistent with the generally red-hot flaming looks and the burning mane that the fans gave the fanon idea of a Nightmare Celestia. And what really also was great, and I love this so much, is that a common belief that Celestia was actually far more stronger than she lets on, but she was deliberately, every time that she was getting into like a combat situation and she was always kind of having a less than stellar performance, was because she was always deliberately pulling her punches. And Daybreaker here was basically showing that, hey, no, Celestia is actually far more powerful than she lets on. She's only doing so because the fact that she could potentially harm others by not holding back. And this particular issue here with Daybreaker kind of just shows this is pretty much what Celestia could be like if she literally had no reservations about withholding her power and just completely letting it all hang loose in a combat scenario.
I think one thing I do have to mention here is that we have to look at this within the context of this being Starlight's dream as well. And in terms of, this is how Starlight is seeing things. Starlight knows about Nightmare Moon. Starlight, knows about that and what happened with there. So Starlight's psyche, her dreams are applying that same thing to Celestia. So in this case, we do have to take everything sort of in the context of this being a dream from Starlight's point of view. This isn't necessarily like literally Daybreaker here coming out of Celestia's psyche or anything like that. This is how Starlight is viewing Daybreaker.
Next, you're going to be saying that Ember and Starlight are not totally bros. Damn it!
I know it's.
but yeah, like I mentioned earlier before, I mean, I kind of get the feeling this isn't just completely Starlight's dream alone, because, again, like I said, Daybreaker completely ignored Starlight in favor of talking directly to Celestia, and Daybreaker seemed to have intimate knowledge of Celestia's own line and powers, and Celestia pretty much kind of got to take whatever Daybreaker was saying, personally, and it could again be speculated that due to Celestia's inexperience with utilizing dream magic, Celestia might have ended up mixing some of her own subconscious thoughts into Starlight's dreamscapes, which led to Daybreaker's manifestation to begin with. Because, again, like I said, when Luna gets brought into the dreamscape, Luna specifically knows Daybreaker's name without it ever being mentioned to her. So,
I'm still going to disagree.
Had a nightmare similar to that.
Yeah, but Twilight. But I'm gonna disagree there. I really don't think Celestia had any direct involvement. All of this is coming from Starlight's psyche and what she is worried is going to happen, because they mention that in the episode for it. I don't think this is anything.
I think Celestia herself actually takes it fairly personally that one of her little ponies would think that if things went wrong, that there's a possibility that not necessarily Luna turning how she did, but that she herself could end up being in that position instead. And I think that as terrifying as Nightmare Moon was, Daybreaker in a sense is even more could be even more catastrophic. I mean, a world of eternal night, you can survive a small amount of time. Being fried to a crisp by the sun, the life expectancy is going to be pretty short.
Yeah. I mean, I think Celestia does see a lot of truth in terms of what Daybreaker is saying, and does fear a lot of that as well. But I don't think any of that guilt or that is directly involved in the creation or whatever Daybreaker is doing in this dream. That is all just based on Starlight's experiences and her worries and fears as to what's going to happen.
In her own dream, it is all a manifestation, but it's also like I say, it's a fear that she has that if she fails, that Daybreaker could be a real thing, and that we could have like her against Nightmare Moon. I mean, she's not just saying that it necessarily will make Luna turn, but it could also make Celestia turn as well, and that's equally, if not even more, terrifying, because the consequences if both end up in those forms is essentially they will be fighting, and really everyone loses in that sense. It's the timeline that you see where everything's a wasteland, by the way, at the end of season 5, if you want to know how that ends. Which, actually, just thinking about that, had Starlight not obviously come around, that future, is that essentially the future that would have happened because of the arguing between Celestia and Luna here? Question mark? it makes you think. It's a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting way too much into kind of sort of fanonizing stuff here in terms of what happened in the episode.
Well, no, it's not. I'm not saying.
I'm not talking about you.
Saying it's I'm not necessarily saying it's canon. I'm just saying that it's definitely something that's entirely. It's not beyond the realms of possibility, and it just makes you think. It's like, what would the consequences be had if it did escalate to that kind of level? I mean, I think we already know it would be catastrophic, and that's obviously why the cutie map obviously interjected before it could even remotely develop, really, because really and truthfully, it had become sort of a niggly squabble basically. But it's something that with obviously the past that they both have, it could have manifested itself into something far worse.
Another thing I could also mention is that since Starlight's nightmare was based off her own insecurities and failures, it actually probably would have been a better idea to bring back her old evil self to mock her instead of having Daybreaker step in to do it for her.
But that wasn't kind of the point. The point of Daybreaker being there wasn't to mock Starlight. This was Starlight's fears about what's going to happen now that she has pretty much put Luna and Celestia at odds. She has exposed the problems, and they're both arguing each other. They're both angry at each other. So this dream is Starlight's fear about what's going to happen now. She knows Nightmare Moon happened when Luna got really mad and angry. Now with both of them angry at each other for how they're acting, what if the same thing happens to Celestia and she shows up and Nightmare Moon shows up. I mean, it's very much a dream, kind of like a dream you might have, where just these really random over the top things kind of happen. So I really think that's exactly why they went with Daybreaker and Nightmare Moon, because that is her fear right there of what's going to happen, is this big battle between them, and no one's going to win.
Can we all agree that the sequel to Inception star Luna? We need to go deeper.
I thought we already had that in season 5.
True. True enough. We need to go deeper, Luna.
See, I don't think she had any knowledge that that Starlight wouldn't have been able to just kind of gleam and stuff of saying, "Oh, I'm more powerful than you," stuff like that. I don't think there's any evidence of that. I think that we're just jumping way too far into fan theory when you get to stuff like that. This was a dream about what happened to Luna and happened to Nightmare Moon. Starlight's dream has applied this to Celestia here, and the same thing is happening. We know that Nightmare Moon is more powerful than Luna, and that's one of the powers that she has had over her, and it's the same thing. Same thing happened with Celestia. But see, that's different. That's because Luna specifically created the Tantabus as a creature and it escaped. Celestia hasn't done anything like that.
I think the other thing that perhaps I think we've touched on a bit, but glossed over maybe as well. Yes, Celestia is interacting with what is essentially, she is a manifestation of a dream that Starlight Glimmer is having, and she's basically dreaming of a potential worst case scenario if she fails, and she obviously is not feeling all that great, considering she basically did something fairly impulsively, and she's gonna be, it was a very, very risky move, and it's something that could have backfired, not necessarily really hard, but there was a potential that it could manifest into something far, far worse. And obviously she was thinking of a worse, probably the worst case scenario, which, to be fair, when we have our insecurities, that's normally what we end up thinking of. We end up thinking of the worst, and that's human nature. It's not necessarily a particularly pleasant part about it, but it's something that's definitely there. And I think the show should be commended that it actually delves into something that's that mature as an actual actual thing that the show's actually showing and not necessarily dealing with, but exposing to its audience, and saying that it's something that is going to happen, but it's okay. It's something that you need to talk out with. It's something that you need to express what your fears are, because you need, really and truthfully, with the Taylor show, you need friends to help dealing with things like that, because things in life aren't going to be all sunshine and rainbows. Things are going to be scary. Things are going to be particularly scary when things in your psyche are not necessarily at 100%, and you're going to have these nightmares that are going to perhaps even recur, and perhaps even get worse, and sometimes you're going to have the help and support of friends and family to get yourself through that. And I think that's a very powerful message that the show is showing. And I think the reason why Celestia is interacting so much with what is essentially a manifestation of Starlight's imagination is basically a sense of that she wants to try and reassure Starlight herself that, you know, this is a manifestation that she does not wish to ever become, and that, you know, that she doesn't want that to be what actually ends up happening. And you know, it's obviously, you know, there's going to be bits and pieces there with obviously the dialogue between them that, you know, Celestia is essentially basically pushing back because, you know, she probably knows deep down that she probably would never do such a thing, but that, you know, there's always now perhaps what would be interesting is if Celestia now, because of actually seeing this in, because obviously because she doesn't dream walk normally, she doesn't probably ever see things like this. It makes you wonder whether that Celestia might end up having this tiny niggling doubt that's in the back of her mind going forward. That would actually be a very interesting thing to see.
So we've done a lot talking about Celestia and Luna. How about Starlight, the third main character of this episode? What does everyone have to discuss on her character?
I love how, like, nobody just, like, immediately starts to speak up about her.
Oh, no, it's I was actually collecting my thoughts, but no. The thing is with Starlight, do we? I think the thing we learn most of all here is that she is incredibly bold, and that she does. Some people have said that it was it's you know, it shows the flaw that she can be impulsive, and that sometimes she can be The thing is, though, I think that here, and I think as Rain has alluded to, with the map being that it chooses sort of the right pony for the right job, that boldness and the fact that she's willing to just dive straight head first is what actually helps solve the problem here. It also, you mentioned that, you know, the third main character is obviously Starlight, but I think, you know, her interactions with Twilight are also very telling. That you know that Starlight, unlike say Twilight as a mentor, I would say that unlike say when Celestia was mentoring Twilight, there was a very big disconnect between student and teacher, whereas I think that with Starlight and Twilight it's a lot more equal. I think it may well be the fact that the ponies are obviously a lot more similar in age than obviously Celestia and Twilight were, but it's not a case that Starlight necessarily looks up to Twilight in the same way that Twilight does to Celestia. It's a much more evenly balanced kind of relationship, I feel, and I think that's also a credit to Twilight herself, that she doesn't like put herself in an air of a position that's higher. And I think that's obviously borne out that when she did become a princess, she didn't really want to use the title all that much. She didn't want to be seen as, you know, anything more than any other pony. She wanted to be seen, you know, pretty much as an equal. And I think that's a manifestation of that.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because I think that's going on what Tim was mentioning in chat there. It's weird because, like, I think Starlight does care a lot about what Twilight thinks and, you know, of her, etc. But yeah, it's not the same as like Twilight and Celestia, where Twilight was pretty much Celestia was. I mean, like Celestia was her mentor, but she was like her idol and like who she looked up to insanely. Where it's not quite the same way with Starlight and Twilight. Starlight has massive respect for Twilight, and, you know, it definitely looks for her for things. But we've seen time and time again where she isn't. It's not the same as Twilight and Celestia, where Twilight would just do whatever Celestia said. Starlight is definitely a lot more sort of free thinking and willing to depart from what her mentor says. She still very much values her opinion on stuff. And we see her going back to her time and time again in this episode for advice, but at the same time, she isn't like hanging on her every word or anything like that, and isn't afraid to disagree or argue with her as well.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the key difference. I think Twilight would very seldom, if ever, like disagree or be, you know, against the grain with Celestia, whereas I think that will happen a lot more between Starlight and Twilight. And honestly, I think that's a healthier relationship, especially in terms of a learning environment. Because you know, if you basically just looked up to your teacher in school and didn't even question anything that they said, then really I don't think you're only learning half as much, I feel. Questioning it, I mean, I always questioned everything. While the teacher sort of eventually may have got a bit huffy with me, really and truthfully I think that they were actually enjoying that, because it was actually challenging them as well as myself, and I think that's I think a key thing.
And it's kind of funny because of course we go back to like episodes like Dare and Don't, where Twilight is sort of talking to Rainbow Dash about putting Daring Do up on a pedestal, but really Twilight does the same thing with Celestia, like all the time. And so that's something that Starlight lacks with Twilight. She doesn't put Twilight up on a pedestal, at least not as high as a pedestal.
Although at the very least, originally, I think that most ponies thought that Daring Do was a fictional character as well. I think there's a slight difference. Obviously now it's slightly different.
But she was still, it's a little different. Since she's fictional, but she was still like her hero in a lot of ways. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think she did the same thing with the one. She did the same thing with the Wonderbolts.
It's with Wonderbolts. Yeah, I mean, I think a better analogy is her and the Wonderbolts, particularly Spitfire.
Yeah, I was just using the Daring Do one because that was an example where Twilight specifically told her not to put her up on a pedestal. But yeah, the same thing could apply to her in her view of the Wonderbolts.
Like you know, if Rainbow wanted to be really snug, you said, well, like you with Celestia then.
she really should have said that. That would have been perfect. I'd like to see what Twilight's response would have been.
She probably couldn't really respond because it's the truth.
Shut up.
That's different. Not really, Twilight.
But yeah, I mean, like we mentioned, like I really think Starlight was really just the perfect character for this episode, and I think really to not just in terms of the right character for the map to choose, but I think in terms of actually writing this episode and trying to have a conflict between the two sisters and having someone come in and try and mediate it for him, I really think that she's just really the perfect character to have done that. And this would have been you wouldn't be able to do this episode really the same way, I think, in earlier seasons, like before Starlight was kind of a part of the main six and had gone through all this sort of friendship training and lessons with Twilight. It would have been hard to do because, like I said, I don't think you could have had any of the main six do it in the later seasons, and it would have made sense to do this kind of episodes in earlier seasons before season 3. So it's I think it was kind of the right time. They had the right character. And it's good. The reason I'm making this point is going back in terms of, well, why did we reform Starlight? Well, I think this is the kind of story opportunity that opens up by having a character like Starlight in your show rather than just leaving her as a villain.
In fact, the only character I can think of that, a lot of people would say to me, well, is there any other characters in the show, in the whole entire Generation 4 that could possibly be used in Starlight's position? And I'm thinking to myself, well, not even Sunset Shimmer, because don't forget, Sunset Shimmer was Celestia's student, so she's obviously going to have some biases as well. So,
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I really think this was kind of just the perfect one of those episodes. I guess has like the perfect combination of characters. Now, they could have done an episode with Starlight and Luna having a thing and have some other character that wasn't the main six involved. But I think this was kind of like the perfect opportunity, and I'm glad that Joanne and Christine kind of saw this as an episode opportunity here involving Starlight and tackled it and really did a really great job of it. It obviously must have been a very important episode for them to actually write this themselves rather than having a different writer write it. Yeah, going off what I'm saying in chat, every single time there's a Starlight episode, I see people calling her Mary Sue, and I just don't understand. I mean, I could understand people's worries about Twilight I don't think they ever found it. I can understand people's worries though about Twilight becoming a Mary Sue by becoming a princess, but how are you calling Starlight a Mary? That doesn't make any sense. It's like the opposite of. Do you know the definition of what a Mary Sue is? Obviously not.
I don't think there's an episode that has Starlight in where she's not flawed. Yeah,
I mean, like, even this episode, she's very flawed. She causes, a ton of issues. So thankfully, she's able to help, she's able to work out in the end and help solve it. But yeah, she messed up. Any other character discussion or story discussion that anyone wants to talk about before we move on? Because we've been talking about these for quite a while now.
I think I just want to quickly go over Twilight here.
Sure.
I know we don't learn like a huge amount new about Twilight here, but what we do learn is it is very interesting how loyal she seems to be to the cutie map. She's like, oh, I wish I could go, but I can't go because the map didn't call me, and the interaction she has with Starlight is very telling, and it's also it shows that I think that even Twilight is showing that she's still learning, even as a mentor. She's learning. Also, she's also gravitated to a higher sense of maturity now that she's obviously become this princess of friendship. And I think it's very telling that Twilight does still get very, very excitable and very, very emotionally, unstable for certain things. And she you can still see those elements of craziness from all the way back to things like Lesson Zero, and I think that's what makes it so great. That just watching Twilight, it's still just an absolute joy, even 7 years on. It really is.
And in terms of what Mr. Ben was saying here in chat about her having issues letting Starlight go, and I don't even think it's like, some people might take that as she doesn't think Starlight is ready, or she's worried that Starlight's going to fuck something up. I think she is that, but it's more the reason that she really is enjoyed being a mentor so much and helping Starlight out, that she has a real problem with not continuing to be in that mentor role and actively
like
help her out.
Yeah, letting Twilight go.
It's very, very similar.
Exactly the same position.
And that's why I loved Celestial Advice so much as an episode where we see Celestia going through that same exact thing with letting Twilight go and having that worry about it. Twilight obviously doesn't have quite as much self-control as Celestia does, or she's constantly trying to interject herself and Starlight's being, what Starlight's doing, especially in this episode.
The only other character I want to mention is the only other character that really had any lines in this episode was Spike, and he was just good old Spike.
Yeah, I mean,
I love how like Starlight mentions the worst possible thing that it could possibly be when it's being called to the castle, and it was like, it could just be the cooks, or it could be the guards, bickering, and Spike's like, it's the cute. Spike's probably thinking to himself, it's the cutie map. It's almost
a friendship
going to
problem.
be the worst possible thing, and it's going to be between the two royal pony sisters. It's just almost guaranteed.
And of course, that doesn't really surprise me at all with Joanne and Christine writing the ep, because I think they have been some of the best writers for Spike, both in Gauntlet of Fire and
Gauntlet of Fire was fantastic.
What was the other
really
one?
was.
The tree episode.
What, the one with Fluttershy in?
No. The Castle Sweet Castle, that one. Their first episode. Yeah. Spike was also characterized really well in that episode. I think they're really good at writing Spike, and even though he wasn't in this episode a lot, that one scene at the beginning there was just Spike at his best.
I like what Tim's posted in chat. Spike said spare the episode transformed into a toothbrush. I love that scene. It's like Twilight was so desperate to come that she literally probably grabbed the first thing that was in, within her hooves. It was like, oh, I'm in the bathroom. Toothbrush, perfect. Picked up Spike's toothbrush.
I guess loved seeing her still have that, very over the top sort of psycho personality that she can have when she gets really, really excited about something, and that ended the episode. That was great.
When she dragged
it was another big
episode. Starlight's face.
It was like another Hi Girls moment there when she teleports in. Hi Girls, hi princesses.
I already know. I mean, give me 1 second. Am I? Yeah, I'm for some reason I thought I was kind of.
You're good. You're good. Go ahead.
Yeah. It was like, I already know. I mean, I don't know everything. I just got here to bring your toothbrush. So this is just a friendly visit, not interfering, because I was worried. I knew you could do it. I'm so proud of you. Tell me everything.
that part where she drags her in is just like, tell me everything. It's just like Oh my god.
And Starlight's face looking at the royal post is like, this is the shit I have to deal with on a daily basis.
This is my life now.
So it's clearly Spike's toothbrush she brought.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on for you. Spend more time and talk about the voice acting of the episode, because there was a lot of just so good voice acting.
Can I just say Nicole Oliver? She just freaking brought her. I mean,
freaking Daybreaker.
Tabitha was incredible as always, but I mean the fact that we got Nicole Oliver as Daybreaker was just incredible. I mean, just the fact that, I mean, I've said this so many times before, but these voice actors, they clearly have too much fun with their jobs. At times.
Yeah, and I think I have to agree with what Tim's saying here. I think Tabitha was just fantastic in this episode, but it's kind of overshadowed by Nicole Oliver simply because we just don't get to hear Nicole Oliver as Celestia for this long in an episode usually. And going through this many emotions and feelings and attitudes that she has in this episode. We just don't get to hear that much. So it was just so refreshing to hear these different sides of her voice. Like the very sarcastic times. She almost sounds a little bit like Shirley when she gets really sarcastic and starts laughing like, oh, she couldn't handle it, could she? I was just hearing that sarcasm in Celestia's voice was fantastic.
Just some of the stuff that she said has Daybreaker. That one line is like, oh, so much black, we get it, you're sad.
Damn goths.
And she just...
I believe it was mentioned earlier in the chat quite a while ago now, but just the delivery of the line from Celestia when pardon me. Is it? I think it was the pardon me.
No, it was excuse me.
Yeah, excuse. That's it. Yeah,
it was when Starlight first came to them and was kind of telling them what the problem was, and Luna, of course, because this goes back to what I was talking about earlier about how their differences and how they treat their job, with Luna taking it really seriously. Luna still keeps her very royal voice and says, "Pardon me," you know, and it's you know, very, very kind of, you know, shocked but a little more thing. And Celestia just belts out a very big, "Excuse me."
And as I've said a couple of times, that's translated into, if you translated that into British, that would be the equivalent of Celestia saying, "You what, mate?"
Yeah. No, excuse me. Luna says, "Beg your pardon," which is even more kind of regal. And she's like, "Beg your pardon." Celestia says, "Excuse me," and she says it like the most like harsh kind of sarcastic tone too. It's fantastic.
It's like, how dare you think it's my fault?
Yeah.
No, let me be off you so I can go and drink this very expensive wine.
And on Luna's side, because I do want to give Tabitha some credit here, we of course do hear the Royal Canterlot voice again, which was great to hear again after so long. But there's sometimes when we get to the end of the episode and Luna, after Celestia and Luna make up, we see Luna start kind of dropping her guard down, and we kind of see a little bit more of a humorous, less serious side of her there. Like when right after Celestia defeats Daybreaker, Luna goes up to her, is like, so did you talk to yourself a lot? and then later in the episode where they're having the whole thing with the pancakes, and Luna's like, oh, you don't have to do that, you know, you can do that for everyone else, but you don't have to do that for me. It's just, you hear this tone shift in her voice. Like I mentioned before, usually Luna takes things very seriously. She takes her job really seriously. She keeps that more royal voice with her that we hear her with all the time. But for those 2 moments, you hear her kind of dropping that royal voice for a little bit and speaking more casual, which is not something we really have ever heard Luna speak as. So it was kind of cool hearing that kind of more casual talk coming from Luna between her and her sister there.
I want to just give a bit of credit to Kelly Sheridan, because I don't think she really gets enough, because you've got to remember that with Starlight, you know, that she really does convey very, very well the anxiety that her character is going through, and you know, I think it's a very underplayed kind of thing as well, and you know, I just think it was just fantastically acted all the way through. And like I said, I think even Tara had a lot of fun being
Oh
very,
God, yeah.
With
She had
being
too much
stressed
fun.
out Twilight. Stressed out Twilight.
Being
is
a little
the
bit more
best
towards
Twilight.
Timmy Turner in this episode. It was so much Twilight stress going on. It was so hilarious. Yeah, and Kelly Sheridan just does. I think she just does a fantastic job of conveying Starlight's emotions through her voice, and I just does such a fantastic job at doing that. Okay, we can move on to humor, and it's kind of an interesting episode because this episode is very much a character episode between Starlight, between Celestia and between Luna. Has a lot of very emotional moments, has that big action scene at the end, but this episode is just also packed to the brim with just really fun stuff and very humorous stuff in it. And I really like that about this episode, how it's not just a pure comedy episode, not just a pure two-parter dramatic episode. It balances this comedy and humor and
It's
action
one of
and
those
emotion
rare
and character
whole
development
episodes.
so well. And it balances them all so well. And I just really have to commend them writing-wise for doing that and not having it seemed... It didn't seem like it was all over the place in tone or anything. It seemed right.
But the humour comes out right off the bat with just Twilight slack-jawed looking at the map.
Because the freaking the freaking Twilight music box. I would buy that. I would buy the Twilight music box.
If I can't have that, I'd settle for a Starlight one.
And I really hope there was a button on it
as well.
I'm really hoping that at some point you press a button on it and it says it says for the line that she says, "I'm here if you ever need to talk or listen to music." Comforting, right? It was just the line delivery by Tara on that line was so well done.
And the fact that she's just spinning around and has like
Yeah.
the music starts up again when she says comforting, right?
Yeah, and of course all the guards reacting. It looks like throughout the entire episode, it looks like Starlight is just talking to this Twilight music box, and everyone thinks she's kind of crazy.
That one point where Starlight's heading out and Twilight calls, "Good luck," and like the guard just kind of snaps his head back into the room, like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah. I mean, really, I think a lot of the humor in this episode was just simply put just Twilight. She was just so hilarious and adorable throughout the entire episode, especially at the end of the episode there, where she just freaks out and then just drags Starlight into the room there. And Starlight doesn't even try to fight it. She's just like, yeah.
Twilight is just like a very over enthusiastic parent.
I'm just thinking of Starlight, like as she's getting dragged away, looking at Celestia and said, "Did you ever do this to Twilight? Why do I have to put up with this?"
Why do I imagine that Celestia probably did do something similar? Maybe
Well,
not exactly.
she had that's
but-
why she made her write letters to her every lesson.
Yeah, she couldn't quite let her go.
Yeah. It's like Starlight's just like, is it too late to just have me write you letters, Twilight, instead of you just teleporting here?
Well, to be fair, Twilight will just use that spell, but just have a music box on a shelf.
Yeah,
all the time.
wherever she goes, you can't escape.
She goes to the little mayor's room and it's sitting on top of the toilet holder.
Oh, that's not funny, but that's funny.
Oh God.
I can so see Twilight doing that as well. That's
God.
I'm always watching you.
Oh yeah,
The
the full free press returns with their fake news there. That picture of angry Luna. That was such a good face. We have it in our Discord if you're on our Discord chat.
Yeah, Luna
There you go. There's angry Luna.
Luna just straight one face of the episode with that scowl. Although Starlight kind of gives a very good contender with that sheepish look when she says, I'm gonna just stop talking now.
Yeah. Then the scenes with Luna, where Luna just comes in that first scene after she's like half asleep and just ready to go to bed. She comes in, just takes an entire pineapple, and just takes a bite out of it and walks away. And then later she comes in and does the same thing with the banana, but she just eats the peel and throws the banana away. Oh, of course Celestia would have bananas.
Just proof that Luna basically just eats like any kind of, slob.
Yeah.
She eats like a horse.
Just more proof that a game of Luna probably does exist. We'd like, oh, what you doing, Lena? I'm playing my 400th hour of Disgaea 5, munching on a massive pineapple.
Oh, Two Snacks.
Getting back to Twilight first.
I was just going to say Two Snacks needs to work at her eating a pineapple into his next video.
Oh, definitely.
Yes. Anyway, go ahead, Mr.
Alongside Celestia eating a banana.
Yes.
Getting back to Twilight for a second, just that exchange of like where Starlight's like, the princesses aren't the best at communicating, and Twilight just begins hyperventilating, and she's like, I'm sorry, it's just that you said princesses aren't the best in the same sentence, and it's making me nervous.
I love that line, and that face that she does when she says, it's making me nervous. It's so great.
Another contender for face of the episode as well, if I have to say anything.
He said, princesses are not the best in the same. It's just like, that line alone lets you know how biased Twilight is.
Just the fact that Twilight just begins the episode with that sort of baffled expression, like when the map is just sort of showing Starlight's cutie mark and only her cutie mark above the Canterlot Castle. Just the fact that, she just wasn't expecting that from completely out from left field, apparently. She's kind of shocked between sort of pride and just sheer befuddlement that something like this was even happening. Starlight switching the princess's cutie marks, and she's like, there, now you'll know exactly what it's be like to be each other, followed by an audible gulp and hilarious, please don't kill me facial expression.
I really like the scene with when Celestia is taking Luna's role there, and she just continues to talk to herself. He's like, you're talking to yourself again, Celestia. There's no one else to talk to. because that unsure sort of line delivery by Nicole there just made those lines perfect.
It just makes Lesson Zero make all the more sense when Twilight starts talking to herself.
Yeah.
When she slowly descends into madness.
And while we're on that subject here, I think we should go ahead. We should mention all of the dreams that Celestia sees as she's going through. I kind of went through and paused everything so we can see what it is. So she sees these dreams in order, and those dream bubbles. We see Fluttershy riding on a giant angel bunny, which doesn't surprise me because we saw her do something similar in the Luna episode in season 5. We see Daring Do swinging on a vine. We see one of the best ones, which I have as an offline image here, the fucking DJ Flurry Heart with Cadence headbanging on this.
I still say that's the best one.
Whoever put that in the episode is my hero. Whoever artist or storyboarder who did that was, oh my god, it was so perfect.
Flurry, if the mother is the princess of love, then obviously Flurry Heart is the princess of down and dirty grooves.
Of Wubs.
Wubs.
Vinyl better watch her stuff. She's got some competition up and coming here.
Episode 200 needs to be a DJ competition between Vinyl and Flurry Heart.
Yeah. It makes you wonder whose dream was that? Was it Flurry Heart's dream, Cadence's dream, Shining Armor's dream? Kind of makes you wonder whose dream that was.
Or even Sunburst's dream.
Oh god. Let's see. Then we have another one. Next one is Discord having a pillow fight with the Smooths. I didn't even notice it was a pillow fight till I looked at it again today. Because I just thought he was hanging out with them. Because the actual him actually throwing the pillow is like one frame of animation, so it's kind of hard to see unless you pause it. So having a pillow fight with the Smooths, which is pretty funny. Then one of my other favorite ones, Pinkie Pie with sunglasses on, surfing on Gummy, which is just that image alone is just so great.
I thought it was pretty tame by Pinkie standards.
It looks so fun though.
It would have been more ridiculous if she'd been surfing on Maud like they used her as a raft in the Smooth episode.
Yeah. Let's see, and then we have an interesting one with obviously a baby Applejack being held by two unknown ponies that we can't really see, but interesting. Definitely an interesting dream there. Then we have Twilight flying with Rainbow. This is another one where I didn't even notice the entire context of it till today. I knew there was one with the Dr. Hooves in the Canterlot hedge maze, but if you look in the back, there's actually, I thought it was just one of the statues that's in the hedge maze, but no, it's actually a weeping angel covering its eyes in the background of that
pony.
Yeah. So it's that was a really cool reference there. I missed that to begin with, but that made me laugh pretty hard. Then you got Flim and Flam and a pile of money, Scrooge McDuck style. And again, probably...
Did you know that Flim and Flam like money? Because I saw
what? And then
What?
And then one that's been wrestling as the best one for me, King Derpy holding the Twilight King, which just isn't going to go away. It's what, 3 seasons later now.
It's the meme that will never die.
Sadly, no horn on Derby, because that would have been funnier if she was an alicorn that shot.
Oh, God.
Did she not have one, or was the crown? I didn't even look, or did the crown cover up the head? Because maybe it's under the crown. I don't know.
Larson phoned and made them have to edit it at the last minute because he was writing the 200th episode, and he said, "Look, we need to keep that as a surprise, guys."
But that was a pretty funny reference there as well. So whoever storyboarded that scene or actually put all those things in the bubbles gets 2 thumbs up for me, because those were some pretty funny blink and you miss it little moments there.
Yeah, I wonder what Rarity would dream about. I mean, obviously it would be
dresses
about fashion more than like. No. I'd love it if it was a dress of her wallowing in some mud with some pigs. Brilliant.
She secretly wants to be dirty.
Implying that she isn't already.
Not in that way. So what else?
We had a bit of a callback to when she was talking to herself. Luna would actually kind of ask her, like, "So did you talk to yourself?" And Celestia kind of sheepishly admits that she did.
Those interactions at the end of the episode, that entire last part of the episode between Celeste, I can't praise those interactions enough. They were just so kind of funny, heartwarming, and just realistic at the same time.
I also like when Twilight first appears in Starlight's room and mentions that she can't really and then later on she mentions she can't really help, but I can play music, comforting, right?
Yeah. Well, the part where at the end where Starlight's kind of is laying on the bed, fed up with Twilight, and just shoves the whole thing in the drawer as Twilight's talking.
It's like,
nope.
Nope.
Really found. I mean, I know it was also supposed to be dramatic as well, but there was just something hilarious about watching Celestia and Luna argue, especially when Celestia managed to sound annoyed.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, and you have it so much worse, do you? You spent your evenings flitting about and giving ponies lovely dreams. It sounds just awful.
That's fucking sarcasm is so great.
I love just the fact that we got just Nicole Oliver just in general, when she wasn't being scary as Daybreaker or being her regular self as Celeste, just getting that sort of sarcasm we need more sardonic Celestia.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like how we need more like sassy Fluttershy. Just
yeah, like Technotron.
We want a sass off between Celestia and Fluttershy. My betting would be on Fluttershy.
It'll be judged by Discord.
No. We Discord by the king of being able to put any pony down, or the queen, I should say, of putting any pony down. Maud Pie.
Nice, yeah.
She could, whilst they could like be sardonic and sassy for ages. Maud Pie only needs one line, and she just wins.
Technotron mentioned this line up there, the line from Daybreaker. So much black. We get it. You're sad. It's just...
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier too.
That just needs a screen cap and just put Goths Am I Right underneath it.
And the last one I had written down for humor was at the very end of the episode, that last line where Luna was like, oh yeah, by the way, there's a field trip you need to make happen and a Timberwolf issue you need to address. Have a good night, bye.
Just the Timberwolf thing was like, good news, there are no Timberwolves, and then like immediately they just start running out of the throne. Now there are definitely Timberwolves.
Also, it's good to know that the journalism in Equestria is pretty similar to what it is like in real life. Pretty damn sleazy. As soon as you make one slight drop of them or a mistake, they'll pick up on it.
That's the full free press for you.
But then again, maybe it could also be paparazzi. He stalking Luna.
Then there's just Luna's fake, like, forced smile throughout that entire montage scene was great.
Oh yeah, you could see it was gradually getting more and more difficult as her cheeks were getting more and more sore. But, to be fair, it makes me wonder how often Luna like smiles, because obviously a lot of the time she's probably dealing with like very heavy stuff in dreams. You know. I mean, admittedly, she probably does see occasional, like, more of, like, light-hearted dreams, but...
She smiles, but not like that. Not like the full teeth smile. That Celestia does.
Yeah,
it kind of goes back to the character, where she smiles, but it's very it's a very small emotional smile, like, because she's very happy, like a happy moment on the inside, where Celestia is, again, more about that outward facing smile.
That's what I was gonna say. It's a lot more super with Celestia. It's more superficial. It's like a case of, you know, it's an outward projection.
Yep. And it goes back to what we were talking about
around other ponies.
Yeah.
When she's not necessarily that happy. It's very. It's sort of not. It's a bit more fake. Whereas because Luna sees inside, she doesn't have to put a mask or any pretense really. Because
it goes back to kind of
psyche anyway. You know, I mean, I'm essentially inside your mind. You can't hide your true feelings away from me. So why even bother to try, sort of thing.
Yeah, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about Celestia seeing sort of the outside face, a mask that people put on, where Luna knows more deep down, like the inside and the psyche. So it kind of goes back to that same thing.
I believe the phrase is Celestia putting on the queenly mask, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. See, anything else for humor before we move on?
I really can't think of anything that hasn't already been covered.
Okay, so moving to the animation and visuals. We mentioned like this already, but we said some. But I think there was so many just hilarious faces throughout the entire episode, especially from Starlight and Twilight. One of the just cool things about this episode, because I've talked a lot about, we've talked a lot about, getting to see more character from Celestia and Luna throughout this episode, really building on their character, getting to see more of them, because we haven't really had a whole episode with them before. But the same thing really happens with the animation. We get to see so many more expressions and poses and attitudes from Luna and Celestia, especially Celestia, who's never really gotten this much focus in an episode before. We've had episodes before which featured Luna kind of as a secondary character, especially the CMC ones, where we've seen a lot more of her in that episode. And of course, she had her own previous episode back in season 2, at the Halloween episode there, the Nightmare Night episode. But we haven't really had a similar episode with Celestia where we've seen this much of her. So getting to see both of them animated and so many different expressions and so many different feelings and emotions that they're going through was really cool. And yeah, of course, the entire, Daybreaker scene. All that battle animation was fantastic, and I really liked Daybreaker's design as well. That was really well done. One interesting thing that I noticed that's really cool, when Celestia defeats Daybreaker at the end, her character disappears, but her eyes stick around for a couple frames before they disappear, which is kind of a nice little touch on the end to kind of mask that evil that they had there. We also get to see a lot more of Canterlot Castle as well in this episode. We haven't really had, a lot of episodes where we spend so much time in the castle and going to so many different rooms. So we get to see a lot of different rooms and different angles of rooms that we've seen before. We get to see all the stained glass windows, at least on one side of the hallway again. So it's pretty cool to see all of those stained glass windows that we've seen before, and all the ones that the main six have earned that have been put up there in earlier seasons. It's cool getting to see them, getting to see them again. We get to see, I didn't even notice this till I watched it again today, we actually see Fancy Pants and Fleur as well in Canterlot for in one shot, as well as some of Twilight's old friends gathered around when Luna's trying to smile for the camera, or was it was when Luna was attempting to cut the ribbon. I forgot to mention then the humor when Luna's trying to cut that ribbon, and she eventually just gives up on the scissors and just knocks it down with her hoof. That was a good scene. But we get to see Twilight's old friends, some of them, Colgate and some of the other ones there as well. One of the cool, I'm not sure what you're pointing towards in that image there. But one of the other points that I had written down here was I really like the mayor of Baltimore and Philadelphia, actually Philadelphia, appear in the episode as well. They don't really mentioned in the episode, but their voices are credited as those roles. So it's really the first time we've seen those two cities really mentioned in the actual series outside of the map. Their design is really cool though. The mayor of Baltimore has a raven cutie mark and looks a lot like Edgar Allan Poe, which is he's from Baltimore. That's why the Baltimore's football team is called the Ravens, because of his poem, and he's from Baltimore, so he's really associated with that city. The Philadelphia mayor has a Philly cheesesteak as his cutie mark, and has a lot more kind of an urban look to him, which is nice. So a really nice little touch on these two characters that are just around for like literally one small scene there. Some nice character design on them there. See, that's about all I have for animation. Anything else anyone wanted to mention for humor or visuals or anything like that?
I do have to like the color scheme for Daybreaker. It's not quite fully a full contrast, but it almost is like where can I'm looking at this here. It's almost like a negative invert image of
yes.
Moon.
I forgot to put that in. Yeah.
Say it's not a full true contrast, but
no, it is.
It does look very.
No, it is. So if you actually take Nightmare Moon's image and do the negative inverse of it, it's the exact same design as Daybreaker, down to the eyes and everything.
Yeah.
It's just I completely forgot about that. I'm glad you mentioned it. Oh. Oops. Yeah, I forgot. Someone had posted a GIF of it somewhere, kind of going from one to another of it, and it's just an amazing kind of character design there. Oops, where am I going? There we go. Find the right music here. Okay, so can go ahead. We can move on to the episode score, and this episode had a lot of score. It's jam packed with quite a bit from more emotional tracks to the battle score at the end, to the really unsettling track for Luna's dream, to the montage scene. So there's just so much in this episode, and there's really happy to see to hear the amount of it. So it's quite a bit to go through, but really there's not a lot of stuff worth skipping. We can start with the music box. This is actually really soft because it's in the most of the music box sound, since it's actually like not score and actually like more like a sound effect for the music box. Most of it's just in the center channel with the dialogue, but you do hear a little bit of it. So you can hear the music box theme here, and then you can hear the score kind of coming in on top of it to complement it. This is a nice little music box theme, and I liked how the score kind of works into that theme too as well. Let's see, we get to the score for the breakfast scene with Celestia here. A lot of woodwinds to back this one. So this next one's really cool. So this is the scene where Starlight Glimmer is spending some time with Luna as Luna's putting up the flowers. And this one's cool because it actually uses sort of an alternate version of Luna's theme that we've heard in the series before. It uses the same exact motif in terms of the note structure, but has a slightly different melody. So if I play Luna's theme here from season 4, which should be this, no? I guess, yeah, it's this one here, yeah. This is Luna's theme, probably one of the most iconic theme motifs from the show that most people probably know. So so you hear that. So if you listen to this one, you see it's a different melody, but it uses that same dotted quarter note, then half note structure. The dun 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 dun. It uses that same thing here, just with a different melody for a little bit more kind of lively Luna. So it's kind of a cool different take on Luna's theme that we've heard so much in the show before, and that one makes another appearance as well. Let's see. If we get to the next one, we get to the part where Luna and Celestia are starting to bicker and starting to argue after Starlight kind of presents the problem to them. There's one point in here where we actually get a small drop of Luna's theme, the actual previous Luna's theme, not the one that we just heard in this next track as well, when Luna's talking. A little more of that kind of score for Celestia with the harp. Let's see if we can at least get to the part where Luna's theme drops in. And then here comes the bickering between them happening. Oh, there's a little bit of Luna's theme. That's what I was talking about there. And that kind of continues to build up there as they start to argue. We get now to the scene after they've already switched places with Luna on the throne here. It's telling everyone that her and her sister are switching places for the day. This scene here is backed by that alternate version of Luna's motif that we heard earlier in the Evening with Luna track. So from there, we get to the montage track of Luna trying to do all of Celestia's tasks. So always love montage music. It always gives it a chance for a more substantial, complete score, since the music sort of takes the center stage and there's usually no dialogue or anything, just the visuals. So another brand new track here for this montage. Instrumentation here really feels kind of like a classic Friendship is Magic score, like we would hear like in harking back to like the series opener of the show and other cues that are more influenced by the My Little Pony brand jingle, the theme. So it is complete with a lot of acoustic guitars, piano, and percussion for this one. It's really enjoyable to listen to. Now skipping ahead a little, we get to the scene where Celestia is starting to do some of Luna's tasks. And for this track here, we hear, as Celestia enters the dreamscape and we see all those dream bubbles coming down from all the ponies' dreams, we get the dreamscapes leitmotif again as well. We've heard this originally in Season 4's For Whom the Sweetie Belle Toils, when we first see Luna entering the dreamscape in that episode. And we heard it again in Season 5's Bloom and Gloom and Do Princesses Dream of Magic Sheep. Got a little waltz here that leads us into that dreamscape score. As Celestia is talking to herself. And here comes the dreamscape music. Kind of ends there with a little bit of harp as we enter Starlight's Nightmare. So now this is where the score really takes the action turn, has a lot of great stuff in it. So we're going to throw down here for the next 4 tracks here. So we get first to our Starlight's Nightmare. This is when Celestia first enters Starlight's Nightmare up to that first commercial break when we first see Daybreaker. So the score starts to take a very dark, emotional, and action-filled turn at this point. So the score follows with a very strong horror vibe at the beginning here as Starlight is surrounded by all those pancakes. And it has this very off-putting music box part, very similar to the music box part we heard earlier, but obviously something's really off about it here as now visually Starlight is the music box with that giant Twilight head yelling at her. A lot of really strong visual stuffs in this part, and this music backs up perfectly there. That quickly quickly goes into the point where we see Nightmare Moon returning in the dream, and she brings with her the Nightmare Moon leitmotif. We heard this one first in season 4's premiere, and the amazing, one of the best tracks of the series, Luna's Banishment Suite, and we heard it again in the season 5 finale as well, when Nightmare Moon returned in that episode. So we hear that here, and then at the end of the track, right before we go to that commercial break, Daybreaker makes her appearance, and she's giving this her own new cue here. It sounds like it's really much based upon Nightmare Moon's. You hear a lot of similarities for it, but it has a much higher pitched strings that are brought more to the forefront of the track when compared to Nightmare Moon's one. So it's kind of cool to compare musically how these two characters differ. So here's that very creepy part of Starlight's dream here. Here's Nightmare Moon's motif. The very low strings and very heavy low brass. And here's Daybreaker. Very similar in terms of the beat and rhythm of it, but has the much higher pitched, not really high pitched ones, but higher pitched compared to Nightmare Moon's strings in it at the beginning there. So we'll go on to next to the Daybreaker versus Nightmare Moon track. This is the first of the two battle scores for the episode. This one begins again with, as we come out of the commercial break, it continues with Daybreaker's motif that we just heard, so we'll hear that again at the beginning. Again, that very similar to Nightmare Moon's score here. And then the score just continues to intensify for there as the battle commences. Some harp is worked in behind Nightmare Moon's voice. Whenever Nightmare Moon has some lines, there's some harp worked in behind it to kind of give it that, that nighttime feel, like, that she has compared to Daybreaker, who has a lot more brass in it. The score crescendos with a lot of very blaring brass as the score climaxes and Daybreaker starts fighting, winning the fight. And then it kind of ends when this track ends when Celestia goes to retrieve Luna from her dream. So again, here's Daybreaker's theme. Got a lot more of Daybreaker's theme here. Score is going to start to build up now to the fight. And now we get to the fight.
There's no harmony!
And there's that harp I was talking about as Luna's talking, or Nightmare Moon is talking there. Builds up here, and then suddenly drops off as Celestia enters Luna's dream here. And as we get to Luna's dream, we take a short break from that action-packed score of that battle scene to find Luna having this nightmare regarding her fake smile. And the the scene and its music, as I said earlier, is genuinely unsettling here. So here's that, and of course you'll hear all those foals in the background here as well as they travel across and pan across all of the stereo and surround channels, just to give it this whole scene that very unsettling feel. And after that, Celestia pulls Luna back into Starlight's nightmare here, and the battle music resumes here in the second of the two battle tracks, Trust in Your Strength. This is probably my favorite one of the two battle musics. This is my favorite one, and one of my favorite one of the episode here. So the score features now a lot more strings, and it's backed by some additional choir as well, compared to the first one. And we have these very emotional horns that are are brought in as Celestia and Luna talk as the fight commences in the background. When Luna makes her amends to Celestia, the score builds up to this really nice emotional climax, with some really well-placed key changes that really subconsciously help your mood change with Luna and Celestia's of the show. And that's one of the best things music can do, is provide that subconscious change to how you're feeling and how you're supposed to feel about this. So those key changes really help drive home the emotional nature of that part of the scene. The battle continues to rage on in the background, and the score continues back to shifts back to that battle music as Daybreaker shoots Nightmare Moon down, and then takes on the whole score takes on this very fiery feel through the use of its brass as Daybreaker lands on the throne and all those pillars of fire go up. After that, Luna gives Celestia the last bit of encouragement she needs, and as she's doing that, you'll hear Luna's leitmotif there, her classic leitmotif for that. And then Celestia goes and defeats the two evil princesses, stands between them, and the score is just fantastic in this part. It's very triumphant and ends on this very elating sound of brass and strings at the very end. This very big sound of accomplishment as Celestia defeats Daybreaker and Nightmare Moon and Starlight's Dream here. So I really like this one, so I'm just going to go ahead and play this one here. It's just under 2 minutes long. You hear that additional choir in the background there. Add a little bit more of those horns in, and here we get to the emotional part. I just love the key changes of the scale there. It just really builds on that emotion there of that scene between Celestia and Luna. Here's Nightmare Moon's theme, or Luna's theme. And now we get to the final part of Celestia standing up to Daybreaker. And that big finish, and then followed up by this track here. One of the little alternate versions of the Magic of Friendship motif at the end of that track there. So So really, really love that track. I just love those key changes up the scale there as Luna and Celestia are making their amends in that emotional scene, and then that big triumphant finish there for Celestia. It's really, really good. I really like it. So with that, we got one track left here, the final episode here, coming out of Starlight's dream. The track begins with... Yes, so we've heard a lot of Luna's motif in this episode. We haven't really heard Celestia's. So as Celestia is talking here at the as we come out of the dream here, as she's thanking Starlight for what she's done. As she thank for Starlight for what she's.
I need to take off now. See you guys later.
Okay, then. Care. See you, Jay. Still going on pretty long. So as we reach the end here, we hear Celestia's very regal leitmotif. We heard this episode. We heard this motif previously at the beginning of the season in Celestial Advice, and we've heard it for her throughout the series ever since the season 3 premiere, where it was first used in the Passing the Test track. And we've heard it again like Princess Twilight Sparkle and Twilight's Kingdom and the Crystalling as well. So it's kind of her motif that we hear a lot for her, especially after some other pony has accomplished something. And after that, it wouldn't be a map episode without hearing at least one of the map motifs in it. We haven't heard any so far. So as with every Cutie Map episode, we end with the ponies, or in this case, Pony, who was sent their cutie mark kind of pulsating, and we get this little glockenspiel mission accomplished motif to signify that as well. So we hear that in the final part of this track. This is a very grand version, right there. That was a very grand version. We hear a couple of different versions of Celestia's motif. That was the more grand one with a lot of timpani in the background as well. There's the one originally, I believe the one that was in season 3 was a little more tame with just the woodwinds. And then we'll get right after that here we'll get the Cutie Map Mission Accomplished theme. So here's the Cutie Map one. And that takes us to the episode's conclusion right before Luna kind of talks to Celestia a little bit more after that. But that's about it for the episode. So again, just a lot of score, some of the best score I think of the season so far in this episode. We had a lot of great stuff in Celestial Advice. It's great having the battle scenes again, so we get some new battle score for the episode. And it does a really good job with that. And Daybreaker's motif was great. I loved the introduction of that, and the similarity to Nightmare Moons makes it just enough different, but just as much similar. I like that, the thought that went into that of it, and all the other motifs we heard, the montage scene, and hearing Luna and Celestia's score throughout, as well as a more lighthearted score for Luna's motif there when she's working in the day. So that's it for the score of this episode. Some of the best ones. I'm sure we won't have quite as much next week, but this week definitely. I'm glad they they added a lot and went all out with that in this week's episode for that. So moving on, since we are going on 2.5 hours now, is about what I expected. What did everyone think of the episode's theme and moral?
So the moral here, I think, is never let your assumption of others' responsibility seed resentment. You may not have any idea of the nuances into their job, even if on the surface it seems like they have it easier than you. Effectively, the grass is always greener on the other side.
That's what I was going to say. Yep. That would be pretty much how it is. Pretty much the moral in terms of workload and stuff like that. So,
I'd also say my usual catchphrase, but I don't really think anybody here really acted particularly dickish. So,
Celestia and Luna are kind of being dicks towards in the middle of the episode, but yeah, it's always a good lesson, nevertheless. Yep. I think that was like Mr. Ben said, that was basically the moral there. It was a good one. It's a good lesson to learn for anyone that might be in that similar situation, whether it be brother or sister or similar natures. So favorite parts and any big concerns that anyone had for the episode.
Way too much to really point anything out specifically. Just
the whole
just
episode.
This whole freaking episode. Yeah.
Just the fact that they actually finally fucking did it after we've talked about this on Triple E for ever since we started doing this in season 8, and we had those episodes about like, oh, what would you like to see in the series? What kind of episodes? This was it, and it's about time.
To say, yeah, I really can't say. I mean, right now, we're only what like 11 episodes in.
This would be episode 10, yeah.
Episode 10, yeah. Out of a 23 episode series or episode season, I should say, this thus far is my favorite episode of season 7. That remains to be seen with the remainder of the episodes we still have yet to go through. But I have to admit that, aside from the season, this is probably one of my favorite episodes of the entire series.
Top 5
season
for me.
1.
Yeah.
So, really can't say which one would, in terms of like the number 1 would be. It definitely is obviously within the big 3.
Yeah, I don't really rank things. Because really, if I was going to truly try and rank something, I would be unfair if I didn't go back and watch every single episode and like make a list. I don't have time to do that, so I don't rank things. I know for sure that my favorite episode of the series is still Heartwarming Tale. It's everything. It's everything I love about the show in that episode. But this one it's top 5. It might be top 3 for me. I won't say exactly where because it's too much thinking. But it's so good, and they took something that we've been waiting for forever to see, and we've been wishing for forever, and they executed it so well, and built upon what they'd already laid out for those characters in earlier seasons, earlier episodes. And it just did such a great job at it. So just bravo to Joanne and Christine for doing the episode well, and having the guts to take on that kind of episode as well, because they had to know that people have been waiting for this, to see this kind of episode for a while. And I can't wait to see what else the season brings. Like we've said, it's just like we've had so many episodes so far this season where there are things that we've been kind of waiting to see for a while, and this was another one of the biggest ones that we hadn't seen. We saw Rainbow Dash's parents and so many other things, and so this was one of the biggest ones. So I can't wait to see what else they have in store for us the rest of the season. Because like we said, we're only 10 episodes in so far, and we've had quite a big number of important episodes. So
I'm just saying, I even mentioned, Tim even pointed that out. How many times have I whined that we needed like a Celestia episode? And I know, like, because even Tim mentions this wasn't a fully 100%, Celestia episode, but I am very happy with what we've got. I'm more than content with what we got.
The thing is, even though it did focus on Celestia and Luna, I think it did focus on Celestia a little bit more. If we look at the Starlight's Dream in the end, a lot of that fell on Celestia there at the end, with Luna giving her support. So I think they did have a little bit more focus on her, which is good since we've had a lot of episodes focusing on Luna and a lot of her issues. But that's one of the things we've always been talking about. When we've been talking here on Triple E, all of us are like, yeah, Celestia episode, or at least like an episode with them as sisters, and like sort of like how they act as sisters rather than as royalty. And this episode it did that so well, and just their interaction and their dialogue together was just probably my overall favorite part of the episode.
I would love to see more episodes like this, but beyond that, I think I'm good for right now. This episode will probably shut me up for at least a couple of weeks.
And that's the thing. I'm so glad they did this, but I want to see more now. I want to see more of Celestia, especially, and also Luna and these different sides of them, because it was just so good. So I'm hoping we'll revisit and have another true just Celestia episode, or even another sister episode with both of them in the future, because It was so great to see those different sides of them, and it was really enjoyable to see those different sides of them.
I would kind of love to see like a bit of a spin-off series of just the myriad mishaps and misadventures that Celestia and Luna have to deal with at just day-to-day dealings or night by night in Luna's case on what she has to deal with in regards to like her dream walking. But I would be thrilled with just seeing like Celestia having to deal like okay, what sort of inanity am I gonna have to deal with today?
you know what would be
yeah.
I was just saying, you know what would be a great series would be the Celestia and Luna and everything they did back in the day before Luna got banished. Like, we've seen clips of them in the season 4 premiere of them finding the elements of harmony and banishing discord and stuff. And that was like some of the first time we've seen like a different side of their personality. Like we got like a little more sass from Celestia as she was talking to Luna, as she was talking to Discord in that scene. And that would be so fantastic to see more stuff like that of what they did when they were pretty much the main six taking on all these problems in Equestria. Almost like hopefully not in quality, but almost like the Star Wars prequels, where it's leading up at the end to Luna being banished.
One of the one of the issues of the Legacy or Legends of Magic for the Friendship is Magic comic book kind of deals with something kind of like that.
Yeah, I read that.
I'm not going to get into that. But I would like to see something.
It was the first issue. I think that's the only issue I've read, so it must have been the first issue. Yeah, that was good. And I won't get into much of it either. But I will say that a lot of Celestia's personality in that comic I can see reflected in this episode as well. Not as strongly, but you can kind of see how she could have used to been like that by the way she was acting with Luna in this episode. And like how I was saying, the cocky attitude she sort of had in this episode. You can see that's featured a lot more in that comic. I recommend reading that first comic of Legends of Equestria. It was pretty good.
I'm just thinking back to like when we was covering the first EQG movie with Principal Celestia basically just sounding so completely bored and monotone over the PA, like, "Dear students, fucking shoot me now." I could just kind of imagine Celestia kind of like adopting that on a day-to-day basis, just dealing with like the nobility and like any other issues.
Yeah.
She's just like coming up and taking care of something, and then like someone, like one of the maids or other ponies coming up like "Princess Celestia, we have an emergency," and she's like, "F me around."
and it's funny because you can see the similarities in the characters with that, with Luna taking the job I think much more seriously as well in terms of that principal role. Like we get to the scene in the first Equestria Girls movie where she brings Twilight into her office and like it's all dark and like the intense interrogation scene of it. It's just like it was so over the top, and I think you can mirror that as well with that Luna also taking that job really seriously, where Celestia is a little bit more sort of like just goes with it.
I do would also kind of like to see, in a similar situation, like where you said with kind of like the past days with Celestia and Luna being together. I would kind of like to see more flashbacks with Celestia having.
I thought you were going to say more Flash for a second.
No.
But no, do continue.
I would like to see more introspectives on like when Celestia was ruling from her by herself, kind of like the days of the monarch. Because I would like to kind of just get some. Because the thing I really loved about this particular episode, like on how the differences between Celestia and Luna is, again, Celestia has had that 1,000 years of experience where she was indeed ruling, by herself, and it kind of would like to see kind of interesting how Celestia had to deal with learning how to rule and be an effective single monarch without that support or without that without Luna being there and having to learn how to handle things more or less by herself, or like what would Luna do in this situation.
Yeah, I think that's something like a spin-off kind of like book series would be able to cover really well, in terms of that topic and exploring how she dealt with stuff over like a longer period of time. I think a book would be able to do that really well.
Yeah, and I just like the idea of getting to see or read about Celestia, not just learning how to do that by herself, but deliberately growing and changing with the times. Seeing how the equestrian language would grow and evolve over the course of the centuries, how governance would change, because I can honestly believe it, just like in times the founding of Equestria, because it was even mentioned earlier, or it was even mentioned in supplementary canon that Princess Celestia and Princess Luna personally knew like Princess Platinum, Commander, Chancellor Puddinghead, and all of them, and it was I'm really kind of interested in the possibility of like what happened in some certain situations where Celestia was ruling from the throne by herself and having to see Equestria grow and develop in that millennium that she was alone. And I would really love to see more not so much world building, but expansion on official history of the nation.
And I think that's something this episode does. It raises a lot of questions, not like bad questions, but good questions that you want to see the series explore, and that's one of them. So I guess concluding things, final thoughts on the episode, overall feelings, anything else about it? I mean, amazing. It was everything I could have hoped it could be. I feel sorry for you having to sit there for however long since you watched the episode early to not have to talk about it, because I would not have been able to do that. So I'm glad I didn't.
No, I think I pretty much covered everything all I wanted to.
Oh gosh, it was just that's the episode that is going to be remembered for a while. So I'm definitely, like I said, I'm happy they're finally visiting these things, and it's not like this is the last season either. So I mean, I'm happy that Joe and Christine are like, you feel comfortable enough to say, hey, let's tackle all these episodes that we've been waiting to do for a while here, and doing it so well. So I look forward to see what else we'll have in this in this season, because gosh, there's so many other episodes I know we've been waiting for, so it'd be cool to see exactly what what we see coming up. So with that, thank you all for participating in the discussion today. It's obviously one of our longer ones, but that's to be expected with this episode. A lot to discuss, so we thankfully got to talk about all of that. So of course this weekend we'll have our normal stream, and we'll be announcing what we'll be doing on the next CQ Riffs in another week and a half for it. And of course next week, we'll be back on Tuesday again around 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, unless Nintendo releases something else on Tuesday. We'll be back on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time here on CinemaQuestria.com, where we will discuss the final episode of the first quote-unquote half of season 7 here before the show, or at least the main show, goes on hiatus. Not Asking for Trouble. So that's episode number 11, Not Asking for Trouble. We'll be live chatting over that this weekend on the US premiere of it, and we'll be discussing that next Tuesday on Triple E. After that, we actually got some good news here, that it'll be a little bit easier to do the Equestria Girls discussions than it has in the past, and we weren't quite sure how these were going to work. Like, of course, previous episodes we had to wait till let's wait till it comes out on Blu-ray, so we can ensure everyone watches it, or we'll have to all get together and watch it on Netflix to make sure we all got that. So thankfully, all these 3 episodes are, of course, a normal 22-minute episode link, and Discovery Family is going to be surprisingly showing them in order directly after next week's episode, over the next 3 or 4 weeks there. So we'll pretty much just be able to treat them like normal episodes, which is great, and definitely a lot easier, and it won't be a 6-hour-long Triple E discussion on a movie, which is good, since they're not being released all at the same time either. So after next week's Triple E, discussing Not Asking for Trouble. The next 3 weeks of Triple E, we will be discussing those 3 Equestria Girls specials over those next 3 weeks after they premiere. So I'm definitely looking forward to discussing those and watching those with you on the next few Saturdays in the morning as they premiere on Discovery Family. After that, as of right now, it's looking like we're having another what's it called? A mid-season hiatus here, at least into August, maybe later. I'm assuming the show's probably going to come back in August, as we get into closer to the movie time. So we'll have a few, at least several weeks coming up here of hiatus again. So we will be resuming our discussion after the Equestria Girls specials. We'll be resuming our discussion of season 4, starting with Philly Vanilli, which I know we've been waiting to talk for a while. So we'll be starting with that one, and we'll get close to episode 100 of Triple E after that. So look forward to that. Not soon after we get into the hiatus there. So with that, again, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week, next Tuesday again at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time here on CinemaQuestria.com for Not Asking for Trouble. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
See ya.